we are live. I'm going to let people start to pile in here as we get started. There we go. We are officially kicking off. I am joined here by Manny Anastos out of Minnesota, and then we will let him introduce himself in just a second. But while people are starting to trickle in, I'm going to introduce the series again for people watching now or who will be watching later. This is the Candidates of Our Dreams series, and I am Kate with Kate for the People. In this series, we are looking at progressive, independent, democracy-forward candidates, Democratic candidates, whatever, across this country, especially those who are going to be participating in primaries very soon in the first half of 2026, which is looking to be very robust. And I am joined here by someone from Minnesota, which I think is timely considering everything that is going on in this current moment. If you are not familiar with the Candidates of Our Dreams, I have a 9-point list of things that I think make a dreamy candidate. But this is not a purity test. We have lots of ways that we can do all of the 9 points, and I've had really interesting conversations with candidates about how we do that. And so I'm really looking forward to our guest today and what his thoughts are and whatnot. But before I let him introduce himself, just a reminder that this is an action-oriented episode. I expect you to do something with this information after, whether it's help with a campaign or donate or spread the word or whatever. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. And for anyone who is listening back later, thank you for getting involved once you review this. So Manny, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the people?
Sure. My name's Manny. On the ballot, you'll see me as my full name, Emmanuel Anastos. I'm running for Congress, U.S. Congress, in Minnesota's 8th U.S. Congressional District, which spans the majority of northern Minnesota and lots of central Minnesota, sort of like probably about half the eastern portion of central Minnesota. My primary election date is August 11th. I'm one of 5 candidates. There's also an endorsement process that the DFL does. That's basically the Minnesota version of the Democratic Party, Democratic Farmer Labor Party. So the convention caucuses are next week, actually, February 3rd. You can use the online caucus finder tool to find your location. It's often just the same place that you go to vote. Normally, you can vote for somebody to be a delegate, or you yourself can say, I'd like to be a delegate. Then the delegates that get elected go to the convention, which is, I believe, May 2nd. And then those delegates vote to endorse a candidate. And if one candidate gets 60% or more of the vote, then they basically get the DFL endorsement. Well, they get the DFL endorsement, which is basically like a check mark. I assume most people, but it's like what the person the DFL recommends. But there's still an actual primary election where everybody gets a say on August 11th. And then whoever becomes the DFL nominee will go to the general election on November 3rd of 2026.
Fantastic. Thank you for laying that out. I did not realize you guys had this whole endorsement process and everything.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. In Virginia, we have our electeds, just the high ranking electeds of the party just come out and say oh, I like that person or I like that person or whatever. It's all sometimes. So you guys have a much more robust process for all of that. Does the GOP have a similar process?
They do caucuses as well. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
You're like, who knows what they do over there?
True. I don't pay too much attention to it.
Is your district currently who represents your district currently?
So right now, we have a Republican in charge. His name is Pete Stauber. So a little bit of background. It was a blue district, and then sort of with folks moving away just in the last decade or so, a lot of young folks moving off of the Iron Range down towards the cities. That's a process that's happened over the last, I think, 50 years or so, but it's now become red. It's a lot more old folks. And Pete Stauber is pretty much known for just being a puppet of Donald Trump. Will pretty much do whatever he says. That's the best way I can sum it up. Yeah.
You're like, that's the best way. So you guys are trying to unseat a Republican in your district.
Yeah.
You said there's 5 people in the race right now for the Democratic side. So that's a pretty robust race.
Yeah. And I might add, the last election, Pete Stauber was victorious by about 15 points. So while there is a big margin, that's pretty much similar to the margin that Democrats have been making up in the elections
Yes.
since Trump got elected. So we definitely have a shot here, and I think I'm by far the best candidate that's going to get the people out to vote that normally don't really even consider it. So
Yeah. And I was actually just pulling up Cook Political. So for the 2025 PVI, you guys are R+7 right now. So you're actually even closer to swinging distance. A lot. Basically, anything that's not double digits on Cook right now is really up for grabs.
yeah, that's how I.
And which is I think scary for some of the GOP, to which I am like, I enjoy your fear a little
Yeah,
bit. Um,
yeah,
yes. So Manny, why are you running? You kind of maybe hinted at it by saying like you used to be blue. And I have a feeling that there's a lot of people who maybe feel not represented by Stauber in particular, but by the GOP platform as a whole. So tell us about like your moment, or if there were many moments of why you were like, I need to get in this race.
yeah. So it seems like a lot of candidates they start with their story, and that's I don't really ascribe to that. So I think anyone could have had this reaction when the evening of November, whatever, 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2024, when it was clear
Mhm.
Donald Trump was going to return to the White House. I was took a walk around I just didn't know how to react. It's just horrible. And said, I have to react or else. So I said, I'm going to run for Congress. That's something where I can make a big impact in this short amount of time where, every second seems pivotal. Not every second, but everything's pretty pivotal right now. Every election's pretty pivotal in determining if we're going to continue as a democracy. So I decided to run for Congress based on that. And I also do have a vision, and I'm sure you'll see my policy vision as this interview plays out, but I wouldn't say it's something that I can just put into words in 2 seconds. But it really is the best way I can describe it is a vision of community, where we as a country take care of ourselves um, on a tangible basis, giving universal health care, universal college and trade school, universal child care, a living wage to everyone. Everyone gets an equal say in our democracy when it comes to the ability to donate the campaigns. But also, not only do we need to take care of each other as a community, but hopefully all this will foster a sense of community, as in like people start to get together more in the public setting and yeah, just enjoy each other, enjoy getting together. So that's my vision. But the thing that made me say I'm going to run is just feeling like I had to stand up and do something, not just for the sake of standing up and doing something, but for the sake of becoming a representative to have an actual vote and a louder platform to resist and build it.
I love that. I also remember I went to bed before it was called for Trump in 2024.
I
I stayed up pretty late.
I peed like
Um,
uh
but there was this moment where I kind of, everyone was watching Pennsylvania, right? And I just remember looking at it and kind of going like, I feel like I'm going to need the sleep by the time I wake up tomorrow. And so I went to bed and my husband woke me up the next morning and was like, he won Pennsylvania. And I was just like, that whole day, I think I tried to ignore it for a little while. Like I was just like, I don't even know what to say about all this. And um several days later I had a therapy appointment and I think that's when I finally was like, "Ah!"
Yeah, Me too, actually. And fascinating. I don't know where I'm not a superstitious person, but that morning, it was November, there was a fog. Everything was just cloaked in fog, and I swear it was close to a month that went by where it was overcast. The entire it was crazy. It really was like is there some sort of what's out there, what in nature is reacting to this, because it was this crazy fog going to work, and I think it was foggy the next few days and then just overcast like all of November. It was crazy.
Yeah. It was that was a trying time. I remember feeling good. I wasn't overly confident about the race, but feeling like, hey, for
But
107 days, she'd run a hard campaign,
yeah,
and certainly we don't want this one, and then I just was like, the more the votes were coming in, the more the electoral votes were coming. I was just like, I don't understand. Like, and you know, and luckily Virginia went blue, but like barely. And
yeah,
I'm in Virginia, and I remember being like, I swear to God, if we
better.
luckily we did find
It's
it. Like,
better. Yeah,
yeah, I was like, I swear to God, if I wake up tomorrow and it's red, I will flip tables over. But fortunately, not that it obviously didn't change anything, but it at least made me feel better about our state.
no, yeah, of course.
Um,
Minnesota was blue as well. I don't know the
yes, yeah,
exact.
you guys held it down. And amazing. All right, let's we've reached the point of the interview where I'm going to list through the 9 points of the candidates of our dreams. And I want you to, from there, grab whatever at that point it's open forum. You can talk about it however you want. Like you said, you have a platform that you don't necessarily cram into 15 seconds, which I appreciate. I love talking. Part of the reason I'm doing these interviews is to let people have time to talk about the nuance and the details and whatnot.
Sure. Now, can we go like one by one?
Yeah, we can go one by one. Would you prefer to do it that way?
Yeah, please.
1000%. Okay, we can absolutely do it that way. All right. So, number one, taking $0 in corporate campaign money. Where do you stand on that?
100%.
Okay.
Um, I at least for the primary process, money is not going to win me anything.
Mm.
My strategy right now, other than getting out and talking to as many people as possible, but sort of my thought for since the beginning is that I'm going to use imagery to 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 show people who I am. So I have these 25 campaign signs that I bought with my little chunk of first few $1,000s of donations that came in. They're 8 feet by 4 feet, and then you put them on posts. And I'm put a few up in fall, and the rest are going to go up throughout the district in spring. So my strategy is not at all based on even using money to win, because at the end of the day, we're never going to beat the billionaires, and we all see who the billionaires are siding with. They're siding with MAGA. We're not going to win with money. That's how I feel. Of course, I will do whatever I can to fundraise, because I never would have been able to get those signs and other campaign materials I have if I didn't get any donations. But in fact, I want to ban private funding of elections entirely and move to a public system where everybody gets like a certain amount of tax dollars back
Mhm.
here, and they can use that to donate to candidates. And then there should be a cap on how much uh, individuals can spend on their own campaigns.
Mhm.
Back in the old days, where you could only be president if you were, or win anything if you were rich. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And there are definitely governments that they say, here's your allotment for running in the election.
Mhm.
And also their campaigns don't last forever, right? Like people, like there are some countries where you don't even get to start campaigning. Like it's actually illegal for you to start campaigning until a certain amount of time before the election, and so therefore there aren't these like multi-million-dollar years long campaigns to do whatever. It's like you need to be plugged into the community, you need to, like, have your face out there like you were just talking about, and then
Yeah. And one thing I want to mention, so just like you said, there's governments all over the world and other countries that do a lot of the things that are poorer than us, that do a lot of the things that I'm proposing, and the traditional wisdom is, oh, don't compare yourself to Europe, don't compare yourself to other countries, and trust me, I believe that America is the greatest country in the history of mankind. But it's also true that we're not perfect. I mean, look at the like disgusting person we just voted into the White House a little over a year ago. We're not better than everyone else. There's things that other countries have that we need to adopt to continue to be the greatest, to really reach our full potential. Just like you said, certain election rules and campaign finance legislation. So
yeah.
just something I
I
want to
I
mention.
love I love that nuanced look at American exceptionalism because it annoys me. The exceptionalism annoys me all the time. Like we're the greatest, just by nature, right? Not because we're working for it, not because we're striving for it, but because we just like exist. And like you said, I this is my country, therefore I love it, and I think it's amazing. And like in order for it to remain amazing, we have to learn. Like that's
Yeah.
the only.
The reason we are amazing is because of the makeup of our country, of all the different people that have been here, from the indigenous people to the people that have been here, families that have been here for hundreds of years, to all the people that continue to come here. That's why we're the greatest.
Yeah, I love that. I was
I,
just on
I,
with Rep McGovern a couple hours ago, and he said the exact same thing. He was
oh,
like, like that's who we are. Why are we
beautiful,
doing?
awesome, awesome.
Yeah. All right. Number two, term limits themselves and advances term limit legislation. Where are you with that?
Yeah, somebody actually contacted me early on in the campaign saying, "Hey, I'm in favor of term limits. If you support this, you might get a and me, a candidate with no name recognition, I could have easily been like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, of course." But I didn't. I had to think about it. The way I look at it in the short term is sort of like, the few candidates or people in government that seem to be uncorrupted, at least in like Congress and the Senate, like Bernie Sanders, for example, they're in the
Mm.
minority. Um, so if we're gonna kick them out at some point, they're more likely to just be replaced by a someone that's more corrupted. But at the same time, relying on just a few people obviously isn't a good way to run the system. So I actually think that term limits can be an effective way to improve our system and make it so overall the people that get in there are less tied to interests that don't help the American people. So I am looking at a term limits of maybe around 6 congressional terms, 12 years. I think that's enough to really complete a body of work or, you know, develop a body of work and have an effect. I don't think it should be like a 1 term or 2 term thing, you're out. I think that could almost increase corruption because you're not
Mhm.
held accountable. But I do think that people shouldn't be able to be in Congress for like 40 or 50 years or even
Right.
15, and I also think that there should be like an age limit of some sort,
Mhm. Mhm.
some way to prevent people that uh aren't have lost like their mental capacity from representing us.
Yeah. No, I've heard a lot of these points too. It's like there's definitely a lot of different ways to skin this, right? You don't have to just be like, oh, 4 years and you're done or something. And if you did 12 years in the House and then 2 terms in the Senate, which is also 12 years, then you would have, I agree with you about the body of work thing because we have a massive government and that is the federal level, which means it is the most massive part. And to expect a representative to really advance anything in 4 or even 6 years is not it's not reasonable. Like, if you look at the trajectory of some of these policies, it's taken a
True.
long time. Um, Even the GOP's slash and burn method that they've been doing, they only just now kinda got the tax policy that they've wanted, and they
Mm,
started that in 2018. It is now 2025, or it was
yeah.
2025 when they did the big
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so
Yeah, like
it's
if
taken.
I want to be there until Medicare for all is passed, you know what I mean?
Right, exactly. Yeah, right. I totally get it. So it's like carry the torch to the finish line, but then also like have really a point where it's like, okay, somebody else needs to come do this now. So,
Yeah.
all right, reasserts the power over the Supreme Court. Number three.
That's a tough one. It's come up in one of our candidate forums. So part of the logic is Trump's ignoring the Supreme Court. So I guess that's not really relevant to the question of using legislation to reform it.
Hmm.
I think there should be term limits for the Supreme Court members. That's really the main thing that comes to mind for how we could reform it and make it less, I guess, corrupt. Like,
Yeah.
other than that, like stacking the court, I don't really know what that changes in the long term. Stacking the court, for those who don't know, is just adding new justices. Maybe that the more you add, the more likely it is to be a good representation of what the Constitution is supposed to mean. But I think that the most reasonable thing right now is term limits for the Supreme Court justices, but it's definitely something that I'm sure I will. I'd love to learn a lot, hear different ideas for how to make it better because it seems the Supreme Court is almost the least making the least constitutional rulings right now in
Mm.
combating the Trump administration, whereas the smaller courts seem to be doing a pretty good job.
Yes, no, I completely agree. And that's why I specifically call out the Supreme Court. The rest of the judiciary has not followed suit. Even conservative judges, right?
Yeah.
Judges who are elected
No,
by conservative, or not elected, but appointed by conservative politicians. There's one this week. You have one in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, actually, Judge Schultz,
hearing a lot
who
about.
is yeah, and he is hauling Todd Lyons in front of him tomorrow and is like, "Explain yourself." And he was elected by George W. Bush. I keep saying elected, appointed by
Yeah.
George W. Bush. So it's not, they're not like all wackadoos. It's mostly Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito, and then, John Roberts is just weak. Um,
Mm.
but I definitely, first of all, I agree that I think there's some limitations that need to be put on them. Also understanding that the term limit thing requires some kind of constitutional thing to be dealt with because that is in Article 3. I'm going to lobby you right here, live. I've done this to a couple of candidates where I lobby you a little bit and you don't have to
Sure.
respond right now. You can be like, I'll take this under advisement.
Yeah, go ahead.
But there's a couple legislative things that can be done kind of in between, like massive reform, like term limits or packing the court or something, and then what we have right now. So jurisdiction stripping is probably my favorite one because it's already baked into the Constitution. Congress already has the power. It's through the exceptions clause, for those who are listening, in Article 3. And people know I love to talk about it, so here is me talking about it. But it's where Congress gets to tell the Supreme Court what they will and what cases they will and will not take,
Mm.
like what they have jurisdiction over. So they are allowed. What has been happening is that Congress has been like, just do whatever you want over there. But it doesn't actually have to be that way. Congress has the authority to explicitly tell the Supreme Court, you do not have jurisdiction over this case or over this legislation, or you don't get to do review over insert thing here. So that is baked into the Constitution. And I think the reason the founders were fine with having lifetime appointments for judges was that they kind of imagined that Congress would always like retain that power, right? Of being able to be like, yeah, no, you're not gonna do that. But because Congress has ceded all of that and refused to use that power for a very long time, um, we're here. So just a thought for you to put into
I will
your.
definitely add that now there's going to be these two pillars to ways to reform the Supreme Court. Thank you for sharing that, Kate.
Of course. Thanks for letting me lobby you in real time.
Of
All
course.
right, number 4, raises wages and reinstates corporate tax marginalization. I've gotten questions before you answer. I've gotten questions about why I put these together. It's because I don't want to raise corporate taxes without telling them what they're going to use their expenses that they would use to lower their tax liability. So everyone knows, like, when you raise tax rates, there's ways to lower them. There's ways to get exemptions. One of those main exemptions for a corporation is the payroll tax or payroll expenses. And so I put them together because I actually think they need to be advanced together. If you're going to raise the corporate tax rate, you should raise wages with it because you're basically telling corporations, hey, if you want a slightly lower tax liability than what I am dictating to you, you're
Mm.
going to use it on payroll. Like that's, you
Yeah.
know, kind of forcing them into that quarter. But that's why I do it that way. What are your thoughts about either the package or them as separate issues?
Sure. So I watched the gentleman that you were interviewing a few days ago, and I really liked what he was saying about raising the minimum wage, but basing it off of a regional,
Mhm.
where you are, because there are different, different, I guess,
COLs, yeah.
yeah, what is the word?
It's an acronym. COLs, cost of living. So
Co-
cost of living indexes.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Um, in different per diems or whatever in different areas.
Hmm.
So it's hard to say that it should be less than 20 an hour wherever you are. I'm up in northern Minnesota. I'm sure there's places like down south and stuff where cost of living is even cheaper, but it's fairly inexpensive, probably compared to like in cities up here. Yet I make 23 and change an hour, and I don't have any family to support, and I live paycheck to paycheck. So I
Yeah.
think it should be somewhere between high teens in some spots all the way up to high 20s in other spots. I think we do need to massively raise the minimum wage. And I guess, I don't know. Can you help me a little? How should I talk about the corporate tax rate? Like,
Oh, just like, so if you're how familiar are you with the current corporate tax rate?
so, my campaign and I, we are looking into a lot of the numbers and stuff, but I'm not familiar right at this moment. And then,
So the main deal right now is in 2018 when the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was enacted by Trump and his Congress. They took what was a progressive tax rate. So, up to a certain point it was here, up to a certain point it was there, like what individuals do. They got rid of all of that for corporations. Now, every corporation has a list tax rate of 21% on paper. The effective tax rate of some of your biggest corporations is like 1 to 3%. Sometimes lower, depending on the subsidies and contracts that they get from the federal government. Like sometimes you can actually have an effective, like negative inflow from a
yeah,
corporation. So it's too low. Like it's way too low.
yeah,
Even the list rate is too low. And then, of course, there's all sorts of code parts of the tax code where they can lower their tax liability. So that is like almost negative for some of them.
yeah,
And yeah, so basically, I'm like, when I say reinstates corporate tax marginalization, I mean we need to get back to marginalizing. Do I want lower rates for the small businesses who are starting up and make less than $50,000 a year in revenue? Yes, and in fact, they used to have a lower rate. I think it was 17% before the TCJA, and then when they made everything 21, those people actually got a tax increase. So
yeah,
small businesses got a tax increase. $1 billion Tesla, whatever, got a massive tax cut,
yeah. That's how
and
it works.
then on top of all the other loopholes. So I am basically like, tax them a lot, like a lot. So
Yeah, it definitely needs to be a progressive tax rate. The bigger ones, corporations, gonna have to pay more.
right.
That can be used as a method to taxing wealth. When I'm working with my campaign team right now. So the few methods of taxation are just a wealth tax, um, an income tax, and then also I think a post death tax,
Mhm.
capital tax. The corporate tax is another one to add to the list,
Right.
to try to bring down or that money that the people have earned, those very few people at the top. That's another method that we can use. Raising the corporate tax rate and doing so and making it a progressive tax can be another way to bring that wealth back to us that we earned, the
100%.
billionaires. So I definitely think it should be progressive tax, and I definitely think it for those who make over or their net worth is over a billion. I think pretty much everything over $1 billion should be taxed near 100%,
Yeah.
and wealth above like 100 million should be 50 to 80%. But then anything less than a few million, I wouldn't raise taxes. If anything, the tax hikes on the very few richest people will allow taxes to be lowered for anyone as rich as like middle upper class all the way
Yeah.
down very poor.
Amazing. We are in agreement on that for sure. Okay, how about this is kind of along the same you actually just answered it, the tax marginalization for high net worth individuals. So very similar, I think, mindset as far as like a progressive tax. The big beautiful bill cut their taxes again. It's going to cost us like 1.2 trillion over the next 10 years for the amount of taxes that individuals, I think like $400,000 plus a year or something, are not paying. And quite frankly, it's not even that 400,000 is like barely the cutoff. It's more like the ones who are up in like the millions per
Yeah,
year. Like they're the ones who are really getting out of not
yeah,
paying.
they have the most money to donate to people like Trump and Republicans.
Right.
Yeah,
um Amazing. All right. Number 6, bans stock buybacks. This is a little wonky for some people, but what do you think about that one?
yeah, I think that's an easy one. Definitely, it's kind of goofy because the Republicans that I talk to, or the folks that lean Republican, they say Nancy Pelosi, she got rich off the stock buybacks, and yeah, it's true. Anyone pretty much anyone in Congress, they know what's gonna happen. They have a better idea what's gonna happen with the stock market and the economy because they know how things are gonna be voted on, and take advantage of that to enrich themselves. But I also say, Trump just ran a $500 million crypto scam meme coin on his own supporters before his election. He just stole the oil from Venezuela, I think $500 million or around there, and put it in a private bank account in Qatar. When you have people have power, when you have power, it's you can there's really you can eliminate the rules, you can
Yeah.
or stretch the rules, and that's what these people are doing. So, but yeah, stock buybacks is definitely something that encourages corruption. So
Yeah.
we have to ban it. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, no, I do love that their poster child for that is Nancy Pelosi, which like fine, okay, be mad about that.
Yeah.
Reagan is the one who made stock buybacks legal because it used to be illegal before
Mm.
Reagan,
Yeah.
and then it was legalized by him. So I'm like, so who are you mad at? Like, I just want to know. Like,
Yeah.
I'm mad at Reagan.
Yeah. I'm upset at both for sure.
Yeah,
But
right. Exactly. Both is good.
oh man,
Um,
yeah, I had
oh, go
something.
ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to move on to the next point. Did you
Sure.
have anything else? Okay. All right. So number 7, invests in a robust, nimble, and strategic administrative state.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, we do live in a complex society. I like to tell people that really get into like I was at a town hall the other night and people seem to really want to get into the nitty-gritty of things, almost like overcomplicating things. I'm like,
Mhm.
messaging is simple. I'll be in federal government. There's these big, bold, but really very basic policy proposals I have that will affect everybody in a positive way and they need to get passed. But it's also true that there are complexities. One thing I tell people is so I'll power, politics is a power game. I'll have power when I'm in Congress. I can look at all my local elections
Mhm.
and find who it is that's a good candidate that's running, and I could endorse them to make sure that all of our locales are represented in a positive in a a good honest way.
Yeah.
Also, there's a lot of smart people out there, a lot of talented people. I think everyone has talent and everyone's smart and capable, and I will recruit folks to be part of the administration, my staff, that have expertise in all sorts of areas. So
Mhm.
those are the two main ways that I will try to promote, um, making sure that we're addressing the complex needs of my district and our
Yeah.
nation. Uh,
I really love what I'm hearing here because I'm getting the sense from you that you are definitely like a macro big ideas person. You're like, here's like the big things that we need to focus on and understanding, like you just said, federal policy is about those bigger umbrellas.
yeah,
And that you're also like, let me surround myself with people who are policy experts on this, that, and the other. So that when someone comes to me and is like, I have a question about the VA or the HHS or whatever, like something very specific, you would be able to lean on expertise in science rather than the vibes, right? Like rather than well, we're the GOP, so we hate science, like, type
yeah,
thing. Usually what happens. Um, and that way you're able to speak more critically and I mean critically in like a critical thinking way, not in a negative way necessarily, but like you can have like critical thought and discussion and form a point or cast your vote, depending on what makes the most sense based on the realities. And it's really refreshing to hear that from a political candidate of like, hey, I don't know everything. I don't need to know everything. There are smart people all over the place that I can like pick up the phone and ask. And but what I'm not hearing is we have this dogma, right? We have this list of dogmas, and we will stick to those until
mhm,
we die, which I really appreciate. So,
yeah. And
yeah,
my campaign
um,
is about community. I don't want to. I'm like the headpiece. I'm the person whose integrity is really going to matter. But it's about you know giving the people, those folks that aren't wealthy and have the most say in things. I want to bring people along and make myself and my candidacy and my congressmanship something that's representative of like for example, I have a wonderful campaign manager. Her name's Alexis Sininger, and she has a degree in political science. So I'm just out here saying what I think, being myself, but she's somebody that knows how to best spread the message and best have a plan to win, and has the most expertise in policy. And it's shaping my campaign. My campaign would be a lot different without her, I think. So that's already an example of how I'm, you know, trying to be nimble and,
Yeah.
address the reality of things.
I love that. Thank you, Alexis. All right, number 8, advances universal healthcare and education. I think I know where you stand on this one.
Absolutely. So universal health care, you shouldn't have to pay to go to the doctor. It's going to be a big decision whether I choose to go, something I'm still thinking about, a public option or
Mhm.
your system. I like, I think a public option is the best way to combine like capitalism and socialism, so that it would be the doctors are still and are still private practices generally. We can have public hospitals and stuff like that for sure, but there's a public insurance system where they're reimbursed. Anybody can choose to be a part of that public option, and you don't have to pay to go to the doctor. And maybe the doctors won't be able to charge as much, but they'll get way more business because most people can't afford these huge healthcare bills.
At the rate we're going.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And then public college, I think 100% should be tuition free. I also think we should do everything we can to uh, help using public funds to pay for people to go to school at private colleges because the private colleges are also often the most prestigious, and they've been
Mm.
forever and they've been positive things. I feel like liberalism and intelligence are things that have come out of universities, regardless of whether they're public or private. So I think we should try to do everything we can to make even private school tuition free because when you're why it's already hard to get an education. Going to college was probably harder than working a job for me. You're
Mhm.
actually sacrificing money beyond just the tuition because most people that go to school, not everyone, but most people aren't working. They don't have time to work. So why should you have to pay on top of it
Yeah.
to where you're already working to get the education, So
So are you suggesting, just to clarify your point, are you suggesting we have public school and that's obviously paid for, but then we have like at least a lot of subsidization for private schools? So like maybe what you would have gotten going to a public school can be transferred as a benefit to a private education if that's the route you decide to go.
yeah, I think that's a
Okay.
good summary of it. Yeah.
Awesome. I love that idea. I think that makes a lot of sense. And it gives, the GOP is all about school choice, right? It's like, here's your school choice, everybody. Like,
True.
so
True.
yeah. All right. Final one, commits to multilateral, non-interventionist foreign policy. And I know for some people they're like, those are big words. And I like to say, well, it just means mind our own business. It's really,
Sure.
really what it's about. But I would love to hear your thoughts on this.
You know, I mean, if the surrounding countries didn't intervene in, the Holocaust, I mean, the Holocaust was coming to them because Hitler was invading you know, how would things have ended? I do think that we, anyone has it makes sense to care about the rest of the world because eventually going to affect you. For example, I do think that we should support Ukraine in
Mhm.
battling back against the horrible war of invasion, the offensive and aggressive war that Putin's and Russia is doing.
Mhm.
But I also think, another, we shouldn't be funding the genocide that Israel is doing in Gaza. We shouldn't give them anything. If anything, at this point, if there's any situation that calls for military intervention, I think it's to stop a genocide.
Yeah.
So, but generally, we shouldn't be mingling in other countries' governments. We shouldn't be overthrowing governments. We shouldn't be really giving money to any other government that's not, under imminent attack from like a really big, I guess, powerful country that's acting in a malevolent way, like Russia, like
Yeah.
Ukraine's a unique example of a country that I think we should give funds to, but we definitely shouldn't be giving funds to Israel, Saudi Arabia, any other government that's been engaging in genocide. So,
Right. Yeah, I appreciate your nuanced approach, and, like, I definitely am not advocating for isolationism, which is, I think, none of these things are supposed to be super extreme other than maybe taxing the rich. I want extreme taxes on the rich, but other than that, I agree that it's like, and that's why I say multilateral, is that there are lots of ways we should engage with our international neighbors because this is the world we live in.
Yeah,
Like, that's silly to be like, "Oh, I'll just pretend they're not there." If anything, I would say Trump is more isolationist. He's the one who's like tariffs everywhere and like ruining and now everyone's running into the arms of China, which is a whole other issue. Um, and so I'm just like, great, this is going well, everybody. But there's a difference between, attacking Iran in the middle of the night and dropping bombs on them
yeah,
and having the long extended, what's going on with Ukraine or what's going on with Gaza, like you were just saying, and not doing anything about that. Those are not the same thing,
yeah.
like, and I definitely agree that, and also it would be nice if we got back to Congress being the ones who
Exactly.
determine,
The
you
American
know, the
not one.
intervention. Right.
Yeah,
Not just the president waking up and saying, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna attack a different country.
yeah.
Like right now. That needs to stop. Manny, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, and I want to make sure that we get to all the things that you need to say. What do you need to do for Minnesota 8? If you were elected and you're seated in the 120th Congress in January, what what would you want to bring back to your district?
Sure. So, a lot of people don't. Some people don't really like this answer. I don't know why, but the way I feel is it's things that will help our district, but it'll help every district. The
Mhm,
Gonna help every district, to the members of every district and everybody in our country to not have to pay when we go to the doctor. It's gonna
mhm,
help everyone for us to have a living wage. It's gonna help people everywhere. It's gonna help everyone to not have to pay for college, technical school. It's another
mhm.
proposals. Not just college should be free. I think trade school, technical school. It's
Yep,
gonna be free, cost free as well. Childcare is another thing that I think should be free or low cost, very supplemented. Um, so same things that are gonna help folks here are gonna help folks all over the country. You know, um, for example, like at one point we were a booming mining district. And a lot of people came here, a lot of jobs, but now a lot of people are leaving. A lot of our towns in the Iron Range have really suffered from that. So it's just because we pull, uh, pull jobs or whatever here for the short term, doesn't mean it's going to be better for the country and it's going to be better for us in the long term. To build long term stability, we need to have uh, permanent policies, permanent, the word's escaping me right now, but I guess institutions in
mhm.
place, just like Social Security, that really can sustain us in the long term.
Yeah, you're really focused on the federalness of Congress.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's not to say that I don't love all the different regions of our district.
Right, of course.
Pretty much been everywhere. So if people, I look forward to people asking me questions about this and that, especially when it comes to outdoors and the land. You know.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense though, and it is something that I have had some frustration with of like, everyone's like, "Oh, the earmarks and the special interests and whatever." And to an extent, I understand because 'cause you're there to represent your district. On the other hand, I do like it when a congressional member, a senator understands that they're there to make policy for the entire country.
Yeah.
And so it needs to be, yes, I'm on behalf of the people of Minnesota 8, while understanding that your main job is rising tide raises all ships type thing. And like you said, working with your state and local electeds, around you to ensure that whatever that federal policy is that comes down is effective for them as well.
Yeah.
Like, so that they can address the more specific needs.
Yeah, and I can still run through it. I think service industry is our biggest economy. We have a lot of casinos from all the Indian reservations.
Mm,
Well, I guess that specifically wouldn't apply to reservations raising the minimum wage, but
right.
service industry is really big. Raise the minimum. helpful that way. Um, Healthcare is really big. Using the tax dollars that we get from my progressive tax plan will help build new hospitals. A lot of our hospitals are in danger of shutting down. Not only will that not happen under my plan, it will be probably be able to build more hospitals. Will create permanent jobs for people working. Farming is big in our district, especially in the more western and central parts of the district. Trump's not helping farmers at all. You know, logging and timber is big. I understand that logging is something that's necessary and that we need it to build our homes, and it's something that can really be done sustainably. Mining is another thing that's big in our district, and that is something that my kind of approach to dealing with the few folks in power who control things for a lot of other stuff or for everyone else. My the way that I will handle those folks, for lack of a better word, is going to be beneficial for everyone. We'll have cleaner mines, cleaner mining, but we'll still be able to extract those materials from the earth.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and like you said, Trump isn't doing anything for farming. He's certainly not doing anything for mining. Mining
Yeah,
and
like,
industry, like,
could you imagine Trump working on a farm? You know, maybe you can picture him with the little construction hat, pressing the button. You know, but
oh god.
but I mean,
Yeah. All right, Manny. This has been absolutely wonderful. I would love for you to end by plugging your where can people find you? How can they help you with your race? And then the election situation again for anyone who joined us after you had introduced all of that.
absolutely. So I should probably pull something up real quick so I can tell you exactly where to find me everywhere. So my Facebook is Emmanuel Anastos for U.S. Congress, MN dash district, and then 8, like the number.
Mhm.
I have an Instagram, Manny for House of Reps. I have a website, Emmanuel Anastos for U.S. Congress, MN hyphen district 8, eight's a number, dot vote. And if you go to any of my pages, you will find the link to fill out a volunteer survey. You fill it out, and we will put you to work helping the campaign. You can I have a GoFundMe set up right now where you can donate. You can find that on Facebook and on my website. But the biggest thing is just spreading the word,
Mhm.
whether it be through, social media or reposting, but really just in your community. For me, when I'm not at a specific political event, it's kind of awkward for me to promote myself, you know what I mean? But for you all, you're not the candidate. It's, you could say, "Hey, there's this guy Manny. He's really his campaign's really something special. Look look to go caucus for him next week on Wednesday or Tuesday, February
Yeah.
3rd. Look to tell your friends about him and get out to vote on August 11th of this year." So, and then once that's done, it's get out to vote on election day, November 3rd. So,
Fantastic.
that's that's what it's about. And feel free to message me on Facebook, email me, you know, uh, it'll be me or my campaign manager that personally respond to you. So
Amazing. All
that's
right.
that's how you get in touch.
Fantastic. Manny, I really appreciate your time tonight. I
More,
will
Kate.
be I'm sorry?
You more. I
Yeah,
thank
no problem. And everyone, I will be when I post this out, I will include links to all the places that Manny was just talking about, as well as a little bit of an explainer about the caucusing and the endorsement and whatnot, because that's a little bit different than some of the other races that we have talked about. And of course, you need to make a plan to vote. You need to help others make a plan to vote. If you're like, hey, I'm good in my district, my rep's fine, I need somewhere to put my energies, here's a campaign for you to put your energies towards. So I really appreciate everyone's time tonight and talking
Yeah,
with Manny for Minnesota 8.
right.
And everyone have a great evening. Good luck.
Thank you. Thanks, Kate. Bye everybody.
Bye.